This morning I reviewed the national press and I was sad to see that Pakistan has lost a unique opportunity. So far we have not exactly been able to tell what we have gained and what we have lost. But the modus operandi seems to suggest much of the same. It's business as usual with a few stops and commas, nothing more than that. And unfortunately, we will suffer in the long run the same consequences, because those who do not learn from the lessons of history will face the same consequences. Let me explain what I'm saying, and while I have I have much respect for Temina Janjua, the Foreign Secretary, but this was not a matter of negotiation, this was a matter of policy. And in terms of policy, I think we have erred once again. I had asked the National Assembly and the Senate to issue their stand and policy on this subject so that there would not be an attempt to circumvent what are Pakistan's requirements. That didn't happen, sadly, and the government of Pakistan has failed miserably to turn this matter around by seeking continuation, as they have said in their own press release, and that of Assistant Secretary Wells. To begin with, the question that first arises is Wells urged the government of Pakistan to address the continuing presence of the Haqqani network and other terrorist groups within its territory. Now, the reason this has come about, and I believe that this is the rallying war cry, Haqqani, Haqqani, Haqqani. I've said in my earlier interviews that Ronald Reagan and his group of people at his time took Haqqani to the White House and also entertained them in various other matters. The strength of Haqqani today is what they created, the same way as the arms supplied to the Syrian rebels created a problem, and the same way that when Western forces took fighters out of Yemen, armed them, and took them to Benghazi to circumvent Tripoli and Muammar Gaddafi. You see, whatever you sow, so shall you reap. Please remember this. I then come to the aspect that the US outreach to General Bajwa to contain the damage caused by the Trump tweet. Nothing can contain the damage of the Trump tweet. He called us a nation of liars and deceitful. The only one who can control that is by him saying he has erred and this matter be taken away from the record. Nothing other than that can contain the damage. The damage is irreparable. It's like saying publicly, "You're liars." Not good enough. There are closing into 170 million people here. You can't make such a blanket charge. But then he's prone to do that. He's called Africa. I don't know if he used the word shithole or asshole. He called the Mexicans rather strange names. He called the Chinese strange names, and then of course all of Haiti is AIDS prone. I think it's about time the United States realizes what horrific damage is caused by this abuse, which is not at all diplomatic in its content. Then I move towards the papers again, that we could move towards normalization if there were mutual trust and respect. trust and respect. There's far too much water having gone under the bridge for trust and respect to re-emerge in its virginal form. What is obvious is that if we are to go ahead, I already said this, I don't know why our government doesn't exercise this. I said, let them write and give what they expect of us. Then let us review that and then get back to them what is possible, what will it cost, and how long would it take, so there can then be no despair on either side. And wherever necessary, we should tag a bill rather than pay out of Pakistani pockets. Another statement is that intelligence cooperation can provide the basis for increased sharing. Yes, anti-terrorist intelligence sharing must be shared with the entire world. This is not something which is a part of a negotiation. This is something that must be done, and Pakistan remains within the Committee of Nations only if we do our side of things that the international community accepts. That's why I had said the only thing you need to take away from the table is the question of customs duties and tariffs and taxes. Believe me, you can't get anything through America or anywhere in Europe without paying duties and taxes. Make sure your sovereignty is not in any way implicated. That is the system upon which we should conduct our business. I then go towards the rest of the statement. I thank Assistant Secretary Wells for stating that the CSF, the Coalition Support Fund, was deeply in the US interest. Let me explain something. It's the goodwill of this poor country which has been exploited. We supplied you with whatever you wanted. And giving it a name like Coalition Support Funds, you're not supporting any coalition. You were in fact paying for what NATO forces and your forces used in Afghanistan. And the Afghanis were not thankful for all these supplies at such low rates of supply. In fact, our monies were often stopped, cut into deeply, and the usual of trying to get something for much less than what it was truly worth. So I would say we must try and understand also at this particular stage that what Assistant Secretary Wells says is her opinion, not the opinion of the leaders of the USA, which are the House of Representatives, the Senate, and the Presidency. Any statement by anyone else, and the Cabinet of course, does not smack of authority. And let me say categorically that at various times various things were said, sometimes even at presidential level. I won't quote it just now, but can do so when asked to. And there, I'm afraid, many a time, words are allowed to slip backwards into oblivion. So this is not whether we can even tap down on in terms of authority. And the finest example of that is what happened with Saddam Hussein, the American ambassador, and the attack on Iran. I go further. Washington opposed any effort to foment separatism inside Pakistan. We do not support Balochistan separatism. We're well aware that you do it in such a way that you cannot be abused or criticized. If you keep sending in these huge calculations from think tanks and other organizations to speak on this issue, if you give people, look, at one stage, very well done, you kept the MQM leadership in London, not on your territory. So you had always available deniability. But the truth of the matter is that you called the shots, because all the meetings that were held locally in the US consulate at Karachi is what actually then would happen. And I go a step further, that in the terms of Baluch separatism that you speak so glibly of, there have been hearings in the House of Representatives or the Congress, in which particular aspect I don't know, but the availability of international travel, and first in Switzerland and now in India, of those people being kept. India won't do anything that you don't want them to. Let's be absolutely clear about that. So, not something that I would necessarily accept as the truth. Let's just say it's happening. I go a step further. Afghan soil as a base for hostile acts against Pakistan will not be allowed. But very frankly, they've been attacking Pakistan, and we've been speaking about it for the last 10 years. And they also use weaponry provided to your forces in Afghanistan. And Pakistan has been shouting about this for a very long time. You have never accepted the premise and done nothing about it. So, how will you stop it? Especially when you are well aware that the sabotage of Afghanistan and the Soviets was done from Pakistan under your instructions. Now, the question is that in Afghanistan, the Taliban has been taking wrong steps, and they're identified as living there. Names have been given for people who, like Fazlullah and Swat, many others in various areas. I think this is not really something that you have wanted to do. And you've just kept painting Pakistan as the perpetrators. I'm afraid the clap is now with both hands. And I don't think denying is going to be good enough. So if it's the proxy wars through the Taliban, whether from Afghanistan to Pakistan or from Pakistan to Afghanistan, be real. I don't think that this can stop the American interest, which is wedded closely to Afghanistan and India, makes it a solution. Kindly remember that. She speaks of the frustration and our unhappiness that we have not been able to forge an effective partnership in terrorism. Beg your pardon. Pakistan gave the maximum rendition to the Americans, if you remember. All illegal, if you ask me internationally, but they did. I then further remind you that it is absolutely clear that for all the preliminary work on waterboarding and usage of hoods, etc., was done here on Pakistani soil, which you had used or taken for usage in Baluchistan and frontier. So let's not say that we are frustrated and unhappy. What didn't we do? And I assure you we did a lot more that you're now not willing to recognize. But if we go back into history, believe it, some of us have a record to tell you what you made us do on your behalf, And if we find today your turnaround or U-turn, it is sad. Yet, let's talk further. We oppose the use of terrorist proxies by any country. I've already given you the extent of Afghanistan and Pakistan. Let me make it absolutely clear. The Indians have made it clear they're using proxies in Balochistan. Then let's get to the Middle East. You are using proxies in Lebanon, proxies in Syria, proxies in the Gaza Strip. I don't think this is a truthful statement. I think for the sake of normalcy we might be able to accept, but we should point out the parameters which are dubious. And very proudly it was said, oh, this is the first time a high-ranking official has not been to GHQ. Well, this whole thing starts off with reference to a talk between the CENTCOM chief and the Chief of Army Staff of Pakistan. So let's not get very emotional about this. The truth of the matter is that this was put into operation at that level. We thank you for, we don't thank you, but certainly for using the words of the extraordinary fight against the Tehreek-e-Taliban and Jamaat-ul-Ahrar. And you have said that the US wanted similar efforts against groups trying to destabilize Afghanistan. After 1977 and helping the Americans so endlessly, we wish you had a little more nicer things to say about Pakistan. You keep worrying about Afghanistan getting the raw end of the stick. Well, I think the current governor of Balak will most probably win the next elections if you don't interfere. And this little puppet you have put in place, I think, let's be absolutely clear, he does not have the confidence of much in Afghanistan, but that is your business and theirs. And maybe ask, what are your intentions that you worry so much about Afghanistan? You haven't won the war. You have taken out all your troops. Now you're sending back some with equipment. What is it you want? I think that should be known as well. You can't be a surrogate mother to Afghanistan. That's not your country. And they have made it amply clear that they will fight till the end. And we said it to you before you went in, that if anyone that goes to Afghanistan is counted by the general masses as an enemy. All of us have faced that in 8 months, so don't think it's going to change overnight. And negotiated political settlement, these are words, I think, and you want to find it in Afghanistan with Pakistan. You know, there is a sort of divorce of where you try to keep Pakistan on the periphery and fringes while expecting it to do all the work and spend its own money. Rather unfair. I think there has to be a greater role, there has to be an understanding. You have an understanding with India on this policy, where India dared recently to talk about conventional use of arms to invade Pakistan and calling its bluff in not using its atomic capabilities. Don't get it wrong. You are still using that strategy with North Korea, so we're well aware where that comes from. And if that is a diversionary tactic for Afghanistan, what is it exactly? After 17 years, what is your time-framed objective in Afghanistan? We would all like to know. The objective is to stop the Taliban from winning. I don't think the way you have observed it so far that you are going to achieve this if this is your objective. If you seriously want to achieve this objective, then keep India on a sideline and take Pakistan's interest in the mainstream so we can help you get rid of it, spending our own money. Not that we spend our money to do your bidding and then get called liars and deceitful. There has to be a change. And as I say, bad behavior by our government. They don't deserve to be where they are. They should have sat down and said, give it to us in writing what you want. And you think we don't know how you're trying to paralyze them? We are well aware of it. You're meeting with Mifta Ismail of the finance sector, the finance advisor, who has been raising a brouhaha over the aspect of World Bank and IMF loans, which we are well aware you control. Well, I give a piece of advice to my own government. Speak to China. Forget the Cascades $50 billion for the moment. Buy out Pakistan's miserable debt to IMF and World Bank and put that into the account. It's piddling for our friends, and I think it is an attempt that we should take. So much more to be said. Well, it can be said later. For now, this should survive. This should suffice, and thank you for giving me an opportunity for bringing before you matters which seriously affect Pakistan. Thank you.